All right. So if you read the blog last week for the newsletter, good for you. And I'm going to talk kind of deeper and more at length at the similar about a similar topic, this idea of meaning and the way that we attach meaning to things and the way that we get kind of caught up in that. And I want to talk about it in a couple of different ways, but I wrote down some prompts here. What I'm going to start with is the question of the week here in the dojo, which is about, the challenge of the week, which is about having difficult conversations. So the challenge is go out and have a difficult conversation. The difficult conversation is not something that you have to go make up. It's something that already exists. It's something that's been gnawing at you. It's something that you've been dreading. It's something that you really know that you need to just kind of have it out with somebody. And it does not have to be dramatic and full of emotion, but it probably will be if you have it the way that you would normally have a conversation like this. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's not necessarily a good thing. But you know which one to start with, because it's the one that as soon as I say have the conversation that you're dreading, you go, ooh, I'm not having that one. That's the one that you're supposed to have. And the reason that the conversation is difficult is not because there is anything inherently difficult about the conversation. It is what we have made the conversation mean. So somebody was asking me earlier today about a conversation that she was having. She's like, I had this difficult conversation with my boyfriend, and this is the way that it went, and this is the way that I've been basically building it up in my head. And so for her, the conversation means that, things might not be okay with our relationship. It means that things might end. Our relationship might really be in trouble. And that having the conversation might bring all that up and all of the other stuff that it means. That I might lose this relationship. I might never get to have kids. I might die alone and in a gutter in Los Angeles in a cardboard box. And this is like I don't even know why you're laughing, because this is where our minds go. Our minds are ridiculous. We take things to the extreme because we're just human beings and we're generally just afraid of life, and that's what we do. So what we do is we attach meaning to things because at some point in the past something happened. Somebody looked at us funny and we were in an argument with them, and so we knew that they were angry at us because they told us that they were angry at us, and in fact, after that conversation, they didn't talk to us for 2 weeks after. So we know what that look means. That look means bad. Something bad is happening. Something is wrong here. And so then the next time somebody looks at us that way, we put the same meaning on it. We attach that to the thing that happened in the past, which doesn't actually have anything to do with the thing that's happening here. This person's not arguing with you. This person doesn't even really have any reason to be angry at you, but you see that look and you know what it means. You are attaching the same meaning, so then you're up in your head thinking like, why are they angry at me? They don't have any right to be angry at me. I should be angry at them. And you're kind of torturing yourself and running over all these scenarios in your head, and then you find out that they have a stomach ache because they ate too much food for lunch. And like all of that stuff that you were thinking was completely unrelated to reality. It was not connected to what was actually happening. What was happening was any outside observer would see that person made this face. And since they don't have any kind of history or they don't have any kind of complications or baggage, they just look at it and say, that's a face, that's it. But we have in our own lives so much complication and so much baggage that we make it mean all of this stuff. So it's very difficult. to live life. We are just constantly hauling all of this baggage, and I describe it as like, your head is full of rocks, and what really there is to do for us is to just unload the rocks. Just open up and just tip over and let the rocks come out, and then you are light and things are easy. But it's difficult to do, because these things that mean so much and that are so dramatic for us, we are super attached to that. It is the way that we see the world, and that reality for us, we hold on to it because it kind of allows us to feel like we kind of understand what's happening when we attach meaning to things, and when we connect things that have happened in the past to what's happening now, to what we think is going to happen in the future. That gives us what seems like, a logical progression to things. And so this is all about the stories that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves stories all the time. And we have stories about our life and who we are and what everything has meant up until now. And, we think we have an idea of where it's going to go into the future. And whether those stories are good or bad, or have positive or negative feelings that they bring up for us, or if the meanings are helpful or not, they are there. There are these stories, and we love our stories. In fact, we don't really see events in our lives for what they are. We see them only in the place that they have in the story. We are forever connecting these things to past and future. And so what does this end up looking like? This is like, you guys ever watch Homeland? It's the new season is on. It's a decent show. Nobody has watched Homeland before? All right, so Homeland, I'm not going to ruin anything, but the main character has something, I forget what it is. She's got some kind of mental illness, and she is almost like a conspiracy theorist, except for everything that she sees when she's on like just the right amount of medication turns out to be right. And if she's off her meds, then everything, like she's got that big board with all these pictures and stuff, and she's got the red string that she's like connecting this thing to this thing, and everything is connected all over the place, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just a mess of strings connecting. And this is what our lives are. Our lives are a mess of connecting things that we think all of these connections are real and they mean something. And on some level, they are very real, and they definitely mean something because that's what we have created. And on another level, there's no connection at all, and they mean absolutely nothing. So we have a very hard time escaping stories, and I would even say that it's not 100% necessary to escape stories and to stop telling them. You can use this very natural human thing that we do to your benefit. And stories have been around forever, and they will continue to be around forever. So we love stories. Anybody watch the Oscars? Okay, I got one person for that. Thank you. I'm the only one who watches TV here, apparently. So the Oscars, what won Best Picture?
It was
Parasite. So it won for the first time ever Best Foreign Picture. It's not foreign anymore. It's like foreign language film or something. And Best Picture all around. And it is a really great movie. If you guys have not, let's do this. Who's seen Parasite? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so you should see Parasite. It is a really great movie. And Parasite was interesting because it did not win any awards for Best Actor. And that's pretty rare for a Best Picture to not win any acting awards. Usually, at least somebody wins something, right? So why was it so good? It was a story. It was a great story. It is a very interesting kind of thriller. And it won for Best Screenplay, I believe, and Best Director and all this stuff, and Best Picture. But the story was really great. It's the kind of story that really sucks you in. And you can't really escape it while you're watching it. You're just glued to it. This is this is what we think that our stories are like. Our stories are so interesting and so good that we swear that they would make like the best movie and that everybody else would be very interested in it. The truth is, nobody is interested in your story because they're only interested in their own stories. But that's a different talk. The point is that these things are very powerful. And if you are aware of this fact, that you're always telling stories, and that you're always making meaning out of things, and you're telling the story and making the story mean something, then you can take power over it. And this is a great thing to be able to do, is to decide the stories that you're telling about yourself and what's happening in your life, and to control the meaning that it has. And stories can have many different meanings. Just like a feeling that you have. You might feel this kind of sensation in the pit of your stomach, and you feel on one hand like, oh, the last time I felt like this, I was really nervous about something. So you feel that and you say, I'm nervous. Well, that's one possible meaning. You could also say to yourself, this feeling is excitement. I'm really psyched right now. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go. And that can really change your experience in the moment, and in fact, it can change your effectiveness and your ability to act in any situation. So you want to be able to recognize that even though the events that are happening in your story might remain the same, what you make them mean at the end can be very different things. So we're going to do an exercise right now where I demonstrate this. I hope this is not going to be a disaster because we're going to do this randomly. Somebody just yell out a number between 1 and 150.
120.
120. So I'm going to page 120. Oh boy, we're out of the stories at this point. Yeah, this is not going to work. Give me something between 1 and 100. 6. I'm going way back to the beginning. Okay. So we're going to do story number 6 in this, which is a wonderful book, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. If you haven't read it yet, you should. I'm not going to ask you if you have, because I'm sure all of you are just going to keep your hands down. So this is just a random story from this book. It's called No Loving Kindness. There was an old woman in China who had supported a monk for over 20 years. She had built a little hut for him and fed him while he was meditating. Finally, she wondered just what progress he had made in all this time. To find out, she obtained the help of a girl rich in desire. Go and embrace him, she told her, and then ask him suddenly, what now? The girl called upon the monk and without much ado caressed him, asking him what he was going to do about it. An old tree grows on a cold rock in winter, replied the monk somewhat poetically. Nowhere is there any warmth. The girl returned and related what he had said. To think I fed that fellow for 20 years, exclaimed the old woman in anger. He showed no consideration for your need, no disposition to explain your condition. He need not have responded to passion, but at least he should have evidenced some compassion. This is how people talk in Japan, apparently. She at once went to the hut of the monk and burned it down. So, I wasn't just going to say, like, what does the whole story mean? But we can even back this up and look at it from what this lady within the story made what happened mean. Because some people would say, like, oh, that monk is so good at being a monk. He didn't respond to this young, attractive woman, and most men would have just, like, had no control. That must mean that he's really making progress as a monk. But her meaning that she took from it was, this guy is a jerk. He's made no progress as a human being. He only cares about himself and being like cold and aloof, and he has no ability to empathize with this woman. So that's what she made it mean. And when we read this, there's certainly a meaning that we're kind of steered towards, right? We're kind of steered towards what this lady said is right. And sometimes this book does a great job of kind of calling out monks who stink of Zen, and they think that they're all that in a bag of chips because they've been meditating for a while, and this kind of helps us realize that it's not just about, meditating and trying to strictly adhere to like the laws and what we think we should be doing. There's a whole world of ways to be with your practice. But there are any number of things that we could make this story mean. We could make it mean like, yep, she's right, and monks should have compassion. We could also read this and say, this lady's nuts. She burned down this monk's house. What's wrong with her? She's a sociopath. She should be in jail. And that monk is obviously right, because this woman who thinks that he's wrong is insane. So he must be right. And we could go in all kinds of different directions with it. But the point that I'm trying to make, which might be very convoluted at this point, is that meaning is up to our interpretation. There is no inherent meaning in anything, in any object, person, conversation, or word. All of it is stuff that we attach meaning to. So, as I said before, we can choose what that meaning is. And so, like, for me in my life, there was a story that I told for many years, and some of you guys have heard it. I was a kid, and like every kid, got made fun of by other kids in middle school. And I really had convinced myself that I was a victim and that my life was terrible because all of these kids picked on me. And the story that I told myself was, I'm like worthless. I have no reason to have any self-esteem because all of these kids hated me and picked on me. And I actually took that with me into adulthood, even just subconsciously in a lot of situations. And I would just kind of have this weight weighing me down that I did not know really where it came from until years later. And I recognized I made all this up because anybody who was looking at what I was going through from the outside would actually see that all of these kids are making fun of each other. And in my mind, I never made fun of anybody. I was the perfect kid. I made fun of kids too. I was as big of a jerk as everybody else. I got it just as much as everybody else did. Really no more, no less, or not enough to speak of. And when I finally came to the realization of this, I was like, oh man, I made all that up. My whole life has been a lie. And then I thought, I wonder what this could mean instead. What could I make this mean? And I thought, I'm going to make this mean something that is empowering for me, something that I actually like, something that makes me feel good about myself, and something that helps me kind of step into situations with power rather than something that makes me feel very small and terrible. And so I thought, okay, what this means is I got through this, what was a very difficult time in my life, where I would come home and I would complain to my parents about all the kids that made fun of me, and my parents tried their best, but their response sometimes was like to give me an insult to say back to the other kid, and I was too afraid to do any of that. And I got through all of this feeling really crappy about myself, and came out on the other end kind of like I had been like a sword in a forge, like hammered to hell and flipped and folded over and just like in the fire, and just like I honestly at the time felt like I was just being put through it. And I came out on the other end like, okay, I can handle this. This was rough, but now actually I recognize that it wasn't that bad because I've become toughened by it. I've become strengthened by it. I'm kind of strengthened and sharpened like a sword. And now looking back on it, I've been through way worse things. I mean, any test that we take in the dojo is way worse than my childhood. So all of these things that we look at going into it, we think like, this is the worst, or this is going to be the worst. At the end, you want to be able to look back and recognize, how we became stronger because of it, what we got out of it. And you can make it mean whatever it is that you want to make it mean. So this is one way of dealing. And it's not easy, but it works. There's another way that's even harder. And this is what I talked about in the blog, was basically to be able to transcend meaning just entirely. To be able to recognize what's happening and not add anything to it at all. To be able to be in the moment and not be up in our heads connecting things furiously with this web of, disaster. It's all a delusion. To not be making things mean anything. To really just be here in the present. And I catch myself pretty regularly doing something, and let's say that I'm washing the dishes, and I'm like, how long do I have to wash the dishes for? And that's a kind of meaning. That's me saying like, I've been here for a while, and I'm gonna be here for a while longer. The truth is, I could just set down the dish right then and go do something else. But we have a tendency sometimes to get caught in these ways of thinking where it's like, we're stuck, and this is something that's happening to us. It's that same victim mentality, right? And I recognize myself doing that, and instead I remind myself, this moment is all that I need and all that I have right now. And wishing that I were somewhere else or doing something else flies in the face of everything that I believe about, being a human being and life in the universe, which is really just, it's all about here and now, and nothing else matters. I don't need to be anywhere else to enjoy myself. I can get more enjoyment out of washing this dish in this moment than I have had doing anything in the entirety of my life. And I usually laugh at myself for having the thought of, I wish I was doing something else, and then just come back to the moment and do that thing. And that is incredibly empowering, but really just like, that's it. That is everything. When we can do that, and we can let go of all of the extra stuff that we heap all of that meaning and connection and all that junk, if we can just let that go, what we're left with is perfection. This moment is exactly perfect and exactly the way that it is, because this is the way that it was always supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be doing something else. I'm supposed to be here. And that is at least a moment of enlightenment, of being your highest self and being yourself perfect in that perfect moment, connected exactly to reality. So I think both are useful ways of dealing with meaning and these connections and attachments that we have. I would say the first one is a little bit easier because the second one really takes a lot of awareness and ability to be unattached, but we should practice both. And if we're going to have stories, which is pretty much a foregone conclusion, we are going to have stories, we're going to keep telling them forever, make them good. Make them sweet stories. Make them stories that are really interesting to yourself, and if you're going to tell them to other people, make them really interesting and make them empowering to you. If you're going to drag these things throughout all of life, you may as well, get something from it. And then when you can set that aside and you can just be in the moment, whether it's during meditation or something that you're turning into a meditation, a moving meditation like Tai Chi or washing the dishes or whatever, then really just be there without adding anything at all to it. And in that moment, kind of feel how freeing that is, and how it makes you feel connected in a much bigger, broader sense to everything. When we connect to these specific things that we have made the connections from and made them mean things, this actually has a way of limiting our experience and limiting our possibilities. But when we just are allowing ourselves to be connected as a whole to everything, then it has this broadening kind of expansive feeling to it. And that's really what this is about, feeling the oneness or recognizing how we really are just part of the whole. And when you're part of the whole and connected to everything, then nothing can make you feel small, because you are everything. You are the universe. So that's what we're going to do today when we meditate. You are going to be the universe. Sit comfortably.